Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, where we offer an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I am joined today by Rob Henderson, as always.
Hello.
And I am Bryan Black. Today, I am going to field Rob's questions about scuba diving.
Yep.
He told me he wanted to talk about it because he wants to get into scuba diving. I know there are probably many of you out there that probably want to be, or are probably in the same boat and want to get into scuba diving. So I thought it would be
nice
an
pun.
interesting. What did I say?
In the same boat. And then you
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said in the same boat.
That was an accidental pun. Pound tag.
Nah,
accidental
that was
pun. All right, so what do you got?
We're gonna
Diving.
we're gonna do a bunch of questions over coffee about diving.
Yeah, I got my coffee, so I'm ready.
When I was a teenager, like 14, 15, I got certified to dive. And I don't know if like Jason Bourne thing happened, but I just can't remember any of it.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I remember doing stuff like clearing a mask and things like that, but I don't remember the techniques. And so,
do you actually have a certification?
I used to.
Okay.
I don't know if they expire.
Was it a junior certification?
It might have
meaning
been.
Were you under, I think it's 15?
I think I was 15 when I got it. I got it in Guam.
Okay.
So, I mean, probably not the most
Do you know
legit.
if it was a PADI or a NAUI certification? Either of those agencies?
I want to say PADI.
Okay.
Because that sounds legit.
But you don't have a card or anything like that?
I'd have to dig through like my permanent records.
Your haircut records?
Yeah, exactly. But so my thing is like I want to start diving.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that I go the right direction and don't buy, the whole setup that's like, I'm going to show up to the dive party and everybody's going to be like, why do you have that? Mm-hmm. We don't use that rig, or that connector or that regulator,
Well, so first of all, what size are your feet?
9.5.
Okay, so you can probably borrow some of my fins.
Oh, well, there we go.
And one of my many masks. So that's honestly...
Step one is find someone that has a bunch of dive
honestly,
gear.
that's really step one.
Yeah.
So you should find somebody that's out there that has been scuba diving before and could potentially have gear for you to borrow.
Nice.
That's what I would suggest. The second step is buying some really cheap stuff on Amazon. And I don't usually say that when it comes to gear. However, there are many people that take an open water diving class as their first experience of diving and never do anything again.
Yeah.
Luckily, you'll be lucky if you find people that make it all the way through your open water class. Some people will pay for a class and not even finish it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That actually happened in my class. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but however...
Because of fear
No,
couldn't...
I think it's just a time commitment because
okay.
you really do have to spend time with the content and understand it. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier nowadays than it used to be because everything's online, and I guarantee, and I haven't taken the open water scuba diving class since I was 12 years old, so I couldn't tell you what they're doing now for how they're doing the actual certification or what am I trying to say? Testing portion of
how they
the
do the actual exams
right.
and stuff. Okay.
Because there is a lot of reading and comprehension that has to go into diving and the knowledge base. Yeah. See, there you go. Nobody finishes.
Never mind. Keep your fins.
Yeah. So recently, I've gone as far as I can in the, I guess, non-instructor role of scuba diving. So I'm a master scuba diver through PADI, and I also hold a PADI public safety diver certification. So I was lucky to get on with a friend of mine who leads up the public safety diving instruction for the local firefighters around here, and I went through that course. And
then is that like rescue swimming?
Yeah,
type
and
stuff?
there is rescue, and I'll get into that in a second. But this is more advanced stuff to where you're actually doing recovery work for agencies that need it. So meaning there's calculations for if somebody goes in the water and drowns. Based on their body weight and time they went in, you can actually calculate what time they're going to end up on the surface. And you can calculate drift rates and figure out where they're going to wind up. And you learn search patterns and all kinds of stuff. So it's very interesting content. However, it's super advanced and not really something that the common person can go through in the diving world. There are usually two directions, and I'm going to speak more to the PADI side because that's what I'm experienced with. But NAUI is the other certification agency.
And those are just two different agencies?
They are.
Okay.
So it really, I would prefer, if I was going to refer somebody to something, I would say PADI.
Okay.
However, there's nothing wrong with NAUI. I just don't know much about it. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'd probably stick with the PADI stuff. And
Sure.
since this is ask me a question about
Right.
scuba diving.
We're going PADI.
I will lean towards the PADI path. And I cannot remember what PADI stands for. It's an acronym. I think it's something Diving International or something. But that agency is pretty good. They're fairly, they are reputable. They're probably the biggest scuba diving certification agency in at least the United States. And I think NAUI is very well versed in American instruction too, but it's more commonly found in hotels, in resorts, and things like that.
Oh, for
down
like
in the
vacation.
Caribbean,
Okay.
yeah. That's just been my experience.
Threw me a little
I've
bit there.
noticed. Yeah, sorry. I've
No,
noticed
you're
that
good.
that NAUI is more kind of that type of agency than PADI. But
Okay.
again, your mileage may vary. Somebody be like, well, down the street there's a NAUI instruction center, and I've only seen PADI when I go on vacation. So that's the deal. Now, the first start in scuba diving with PADI is to get your open water certification.
Okay.
And that's probably what you're thinking of. If you did any kind of instruction, it probably would have been in a initial open water type diving
So
instruction.
what's the opposite of open water?
Closed water?
So is that like a...
No, open water just means it's just the name they give to the certification.
Oh, okay.
It just means, I think it has to do with something like, hey, instead of diving in a pool, now you can dive in open water.
Okay,
It's
that
not
makes sense.
enclosed. You're not in a terrarium
You're in
or
a
an
tank.
aquarium. Yeah, right. But they do usually start with pool dives. So they'll have some type of pool you'll train in before you go into a lake. Because I think with the open water certification, you have to do your ending dive in open water. So meaning...
So it can't be in a pool.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So I know like around here, they'll typically go to some of the natural fed springs, or they'll go down to like Lake Travis down by Austin or somewhere like that. Like I went to Lake Travis because I don't even know if the Clear Springs Scuba Park that's near here, there's another one, Athens Scuba Center. Those are both natural fed quarries, I think, that are scuba parks. And I don't think either of those places were around. I don't think.
Oh, so they've
whenever
sprouted up since then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember why we chose to drive all the way down to Lake Travis in Austin, which is 3.5 hour drive, depending on how you drive, from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But I mean, I was young. I was 12 years old when I got certified, so my dad went with me, and we stayed in a hotel and everything. But that was my first experience with it, and now it's a little easier to do everything
Closer
in this
places.
area. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But that's kind of the first step, is to sign up for a class. So, if those of you at home that are listening, or, to you also, you just really need to find a local scuba shop that does training. And most places, will offer training in one of those two agencies. If you don't see an agency name on the type of training that they're offering, I would probably just disavow
So like not
it.
even PADI
Yeah.
cert.
Yeah. So some places...
Just like Jim Bob's certification.
Yeah, and I've seen that before. So some scuba
Interesting.
shops will just do their own kind of certification and won't, really be...
So what are the legalities of diving? I mean, is it one of those...
Anybody can scuba dive.
So you don't have to technically have a certification.
You do not.
Okay.
However, the place that you need a certification is to fill up air tanks. So if you have somebody that has a place to fill up air tanks that then there's no issues about...
That's interesting. That's an interesting way for them to kind of gate it.
That is
cool.
how they gate the community, is air fills. So most places you go to will require a card from a commercial scuba diving company to be able
really
to
cool.
fill tanks. Yeah,
I'm just thinking you can
because
dive
you can buy equipment anywhere. I mean, you can get it on Amazon,
Sure.
you can get it on eBay, you can get it anywhere.
But to fill it.
Yeah, but to fill
that's a good idea.
tanks, depending on where you go. So, scuba parks will require that. But to my knowledge, there's nowhere other than some fire departments I know that have scuba teams that you can go to fill, and that it's not like you can just go there and they'll
Go
fill
to the
your
fire
air tank.
department.
Right.
Here's my tank.
But what I'm trying to say is there's not many places that exist that can fill.
Well, that's I
air.
was wondering why
Yeah.
a shop would do their own certification, but if they then fill air and you keep coming back to that shop, I can understand it.
Right.
But yeah, okay.
And that's few and far between. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. I'm not saying there's a bunch of shady scuba shops out there. I'm just saying just be careful about that
Yeah.
when you're out
Make
there.
sure
looking.
it says
Yeah.
PADI or NAUI, whichever you chose.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that's the first step. Sign up for a class, and most likely it'll be like 6 weeks, and you'll go to a class once a week.
Okay.
For a couple hours
about 6
at
sessions.
night. Yeah. And then you'll typically do a weekend dive. So,
Nice.
And they may do some weekend work on the pool, or they may include that in that nighttime class instruction for one of the days. But if I can remember correctly, open water is somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 weeks or something. I could be
That's
wrong.
less than I thought.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
But you'll learn about different things like the gas laws and how things affect you. You learn how to clear a mask. You learn how, buoyancy control is a big thing in open water because you're wearing a buoyancy compensator or a BC, and you're learning your trim, or you're learning how to hover in the water being stationary, because that's really what you want to make sure of is, when you're diving around corals and things, which is hopefully the goal, you get out into nicer conditions with
The ocean.
with actual visibility and not 2-foot lake visibility. That you'll be able to dive amongst those things and not kick over corals when you're scuba diving. So that's where the whole buoyancy things comes into play.
Okay.
So, but yeah, standard loadout with scuba diving is a pair of fins, some booties, obviously your swimsuit. Some people do wear wetsuits. Even in the pool, you don't have to, but it's a good idea to have a wetsuit.
Yeah.
You can also rent those. Most scuba places will rent wetsuits, and some even rent all the gear, so you could check into that too.
To see what you like
yeah.
best. That sounds like
And
a
most
good
places will at least rent the tank as part of the class. That's usually included. They'll let you borrow the tank and most likely the regulator and stuff like that too. But that's kind of the gear. You've got your buoyancy compensator, which is kind of like a jacket, and the tank mounts to the buoyancy compensator. And through I think it's a low pressure, I can't remember. I think it's a low pressure line that comes off the first stage, and that's what actually screws on to the tank. And there's a hose that comes off that hooks into that buoyancy compensator. So it's like a demand valve. So
Gotcha.
you're basically
Up and
touching
down.
that to inflate, the vest with air. And then there's a dump valve to put the air out.
Okay, so you can actively inflate and deflate.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's most of them have a manual inflation method too, just in case something happens. But then, so that first stage is what connects to the tank, and you'll have the tank mounted to the BC. Then you'll have a line that comes off that first stage from your regular. It's called a second stage that you breathe through.
Okay.
And then most classes will require you to have an octopus, which is a secondary regulator that's for buddy breathing.
Okay.
So
And that's to give to somebody off your
correct.
tank. Okay.
Yeah.
Check.
So both those lines are coming through that first stage regulator into the air source or air supply. And then you'll have a line coming off into your BC. So that's kind of standard what it'll look like. And then you'll have a mask, of course, and you'll probably be required to have a snorkel. Definitely suggest some anti-fog,
Yeah.
for the mask. Some people just spit in it. Some people use toothpaste. I've just always liked the commercial
The actual
anti-fog.
stuff they make for anti-fog.
Yeah, because it works pretty good. I still swear by that stuff. I take it with me when I swim laps in the pool too, and I put it in my goggles for swimming.
Well,
So-
considering I'll probably be borrowing your mask, I won't spit in it.
yeah,
We'll use some actual defog.
I can let you borrow some defogger.
I got this working perfect.
Yeah, but most masks, the thing to do too is to make sure the mask fits you. Like that's a big thing with scuba diving because there's really, I think, no worse feeling when you're scuba diving than having a mask that leaks water and you're having to clear your mask the whole time. I mean, it's a fairly simple process to clear a mask, but you just don't want to have to deal with
Sure.
that. So the way to do that is to take the strap off your head and just put the mask on your face and just press it into your face so you get that suction.
Okay.
And if it stays, then
Then
know
it
the
fits.
mask fits you correctly.
Okay.
If it falls off immediately, you don't have a good seal. And you'll need to figure out another way.
So is a mask
sticking to the
something
mask.
you would recommend as like the first thing to purchase just because of how personal
If
it
I
is?
was going to purchase a piece of equipment first, yes,
Okay.
I would get a mask. And if I knew it was something I wanted to get into, I would probably purchase a pretty good mask.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of I can't think of the brand offhand. Aqualung?
I think it sounds familiar.
Aqualung.
You've talked about them before.
Yeah, but that's the mask I really like. I think they still make them. I've probably got 6 different masks just because
Jeez.
I've accumulated them over the years. But it's just like holsters, man.
Yeah,
you got
a box full of masks.
I got a box full of masks and 2 snorkels, which
what's the
it's
SERPA
too
of the
many.
mask world?
Right? Yeah, it's probably a mask period. And I've got more wetsuits than I care to admit.
Yeah.
I'm looking at half the rack of them right now, but so, and then fins. I've got way too many fins as well. So anyway, I got some gear you can borrow.
Much stuff.
If you get into diving.
Okay, you got wetsuit.
Yep.
Do they make a dry suit?
Yeah, they do.
What's the purpose?
So a dry suit keeps you warmer. It's a warmth thing.
Okay.
And that's the primary purpose. It's not to put on a dry suit and
so it doesn't keep you
bust
dry
in
actually.
Like True Lies, where you
because what I want to do is like
go
put a
up on the
tuxedo
shore.
on, and like put a suit over the top.
You could, I mean, technically, I guess you could do that because everything is sealed, but it's a big pain in the ass. Like it's not gonna.
James Bond's gonna get out of the water with wet ankles.
Yeah, unless you're invading a foreign country, I don't think it's really necessary.
Yeah. So dry suit's really just kind of like colder climate.
Yeah. So the thing with the dry suit too is you can regulate the air that's contained in there, because the thing about a dry suit is, let's say you put on, just think about a suit real quick, and your neck and your sleeves and your ankles are all sealed. So then you go underwater, well, that air is now going to
basically just like balloons out.
Right. Well, it expands as you come up. It's I forget, it's Boyle's law.
Yeah, the water air at depth is like twice as much or something.
Yeah, I mean pressure. It's a pressure depth relationship, and man, I'm so far out of the loop on dive law right now. I can't think about it. Pressure and I think they're inversely proportional.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've heard like a lungful of air at a certain depth is like twice as much.
Yeah, I mean
at surface.
Yeah, the premise is you can go down to depth on a breath hold and your lung capacity increases. So
also why you want to exhale as you come up, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing to worry about is someone that's actually had an AG before. I'll tell you, it's no joke. Yeah, and you really want to pay attention during that part. Yeah, I mean that's why.
I mean that's the scariest thing to me.
That's why my career in the Navy's over because of AG. So
and we had the contributor that wrote the dive articles for us about his time in the decompression chamber. It's like it does not look fun.
Yeah, when I got an AG, they pulled me out of the water, and I spent 6 hours in a chamber getting pressed, and right when the pressure in my chest started to subside and I actually came out of the chamber, the dive medical officer was standing there with a needle about 4 foot long. And he was like, it's a good thing that pressure released because I was about to come in here and stab you in the chest with this. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, it's no joke. I mean, diving is very serious. There are serious ramifications from it. You know, I had an AG and I've been diving since I was 12 years old. Right. So it was a weird coincidence or how that happened because my ascent rate was probably, I was tethered to a buddy and he didn't get the bend. So it's kind of a weird thing. Just pay attention. That's all I'm going to say.
And that's why the certification seems to be so important.
Yeah, it's a dangerous sport, and that's why I recommend going with a reputable agency and making sure you pay attention in class and learn the laws and don't forget them like I do. I mean, I understand the concepts and
if you were about to go diving, you'd probably look some stuff up.
Well, dive laws are one of those things where you understand the physics. Yeah. So it's dive physics. So you understand the physiological changes that your body undergoes underwater, and those kind of things stick with you. And it's what kind of constitutes the reasons the do's and don'ts of diving.
So it's like what to do. It's just you couldn't give like a presentation on the thesis behind it. Right. That makes sense.
Correct.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff like that.
It's years of learning, about diving and things like that too. So after open water, there's a lot of different paths that you can take. You can continue on in most agencies. There's an advanced certification, and that just teaches you advanced principles of diving. You get more into dive tables and things like that, and calculations based on that, and some other more advanced topics. And then on the PADI side, you can get into rescue diver, and that's actually, I think, the third level of diving. And that is where you are basically learning rescue techniques underwater. So if somebody has an accident underwater, you know how to treat them.
Gotcha.
You know, you're doing kind of, I don't want to call them buddy carries, but you know, you're learning how to manipulate your buddy's dive rig and get them to the surface safely and get them to the shore safely and up a ladder and all that kind of stuff. So very important stuff.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's when you can kind of divert your path, if I remember correctly, with PADI. So you can either go the instructor way or you can go just the commercial side. So the commercial side is what I did. I didn't want to do the instructor thing.
Yeah.
And then you start earning specialties, and then you eventually get your, God, does it go right to master? I think it's, yeah, you start earning specialties, and there's a certain number of specialties and hours that it takes to get your master diver.
Okay, so it's like a time type thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty damn sure that was where it stopped.
I didn't know there were that many levels. That's cool.
There's quite a
lot
few.
of areas to progress.
I'm hoping I'm not forgetting anything, but anyway, I'm not familiar with the actual instructor side of things because I never went down that route. But yeah, I mean, I love diving. Like I said, I've been doing it since I was 12. I haven't been in the water for about a year, and I'm kind of itching to get back in and do something, especially this summer. I really want to go diving again.
Yeah.
But it's tough too because if you don't know anybody to go diving with, it's kind of
just drive to the lake by yourself.
You don't want to do that,
right.
And that's the thing. You always want to have a dive buddy or a swim buddy with you all the time in case something happens. It's accountability, and so many things can go wrong underwater if you don't have somebody watching your back. It's a bad thing. So yeah, that's the gist really of diving.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you definitely did. I think the kind of the broad strokes is like find a reputable place and take a class versus like, and I have such a knee jerk reaction of like, what gear can I buy? But it's like, no, you should. I mean, it makes a lot of sense of like, maybe you don't like the fins that you buy, and then you're stuck, with fins you don't want.
Yeah, and we can come back to the gear thing because that is a very important consideration. I would definitely try to rent everything you can from the dive shop. Because here's the thing, you can borrow, and the more I think about this, you can borrow gear from a buddy, and I will, personally, I'll let you borrow whatever you want of my stuff. However, if somebody knows somebody that has been diving and wants to borrow their gear, you're kind of limited in a way because, first of all, like I said, masks are tough to get fit in, and sometimes fins don't fit right. So really a dive shop is the best place because they've probably got a lot of options.
I was going to say somebody else might have preference, and then you're just getting what Dave dives with. You know?
And it can get you a broader scope of what's out there. If a dive shop can say, hey, let me try a mask out that I can rent, and that type of thing. So
awesome. Well, that's where I'll start.
Might find a good brand that way too that you like. Trying to think of any other considerations. I really enjoyed all the instruction I've had so far. It's been super educational, and I really like learning about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't recommend diving enough to people. I think it's great.
Awesome.
Some people just don't like being underwater.
Yeah.
I personally love it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm half fish, so
that helps.
I've always liked the water a lot. Trying to think if there's anything else to really kind of mention in the world of diving. I mean, we talked about equipment, talked about training. Yeah, there's a whole world out there that
underneath.
Yeah, I forget the percentage of
dive right in.
Yeah, I forget the percentage of the world that's
isn't there like 70%?
Yeah,
something big like that.
I used to know the damn number.
Lots.
This episode is making me realize what I've forgotten.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. It's a use it or lose it kind of thing. Thanks for listening to Gear Tasting Radio. Remember, if you have questions, use the pound tag Gear Tasting on your social media network. We'll find them and get them answered here on the show. We promise eventually we'll get to them. We have questions. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts so you can be the first to know when we release a new episode. And also in iTunes or on the Apple Podcasts app, you can leave a review for us. Hopefully it's 5 stars. We would very much appreciate it. It helps expose our podcast to potential listeners and lets Apple kind of get our show into new viewership. So we very much appreciate it. Last but not least, check out our Patreon page. You can contribute on a monthly basis to help us produce better content. Visit patreon.com/ITS Tactical. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.